Hey guys, I'm Tiffany Harelik, and I am beyond excited to host my friend and colleague Suzanne Gerber on today's podcast. This podcast is about Venus. We're calling it Love and the Law of Attraction in Astrology, the evolutionary promise of your Venus and your role in it. And the reason I'm so excited is because, love and money are two of the most popular questions we get asked in astrology. And I know that through this conversation, you're going to learn a lot about Venus, but also about love and your role in finding and attracting love and becoming the love that you're looking for. So there's so many juicy lessons. First of all, thank you, Suzanne, for being here with me. I know you're in a busy time of your schedule, and I'm just so excited to have you. So thank you.
Oh, it's such an honor and it's so much fun to be here with you, Tiffany. Thank you.
Amazing. So, guys, I wanted Suzanne she hosts a summit, an astrology summit through Stars and Stones Astrology, and that's how I found Suzanne. And Suzanne, you've been on your summit has been on my vision board for many years. So this
spring will be number 5.
spring will be number 5 for your summit, and you get some of the best, the most interesting astrology conversations. And so first of all, I want everybody to know that's how I found you, but also to stay tuned for that because it happens in the summer. I use it kind of as a walking companion, so I'm always like listening and learning and walking, and I just thank you because I know it's a huge labor of love. But for everybody that doesn't know Suzanne, I also asked her to provide a longer bio that I'm going to read for you all. So Suzanne is a classically trained modern astrological counselor who's been in practice since the 80s and who is also has a decades-long career in journalism in New York City. Her first inkling that life wasn't as it seemed came from a Ouija board. She was 10 years old, her grandmother had just died, and a friend came over with something she'd never seen before, a Ouija board. The girls no sooner put their fingers on the pointer than it started to move, spelling out, "I love you," and an unfamiliar word, Giddle. Is that how you say it? I should have asked.
Yeah, that was how it was pronounced.
Giddle. And Suzanne excitedly went to find her mother, who was home in bed, too depressed to work. But when she told her the news, her mother burst into tears. Giddel was your grandmother's Hebrew name. It's Gidel. She said, from then on, inexplicable things continued to happen, including finding her astrology teacher the week she moved to New York City from an online classified ad, one-line classified ad in the Village Voice. Suzanne has never stopped learning or reading charts. To date, countless thousands. She uses astrology and her other trainings to help people find their purpose, overcome their blocks to attract love and fulfilling work, and live their soul's purpose. So welcome, Suzanne.
Well, thank you, Tiffany.
So this is so juicy. So we are absolutely today, we're going to talk about Venus through the signs and houses. They go hand in hand. So this is what you can expect from us. We're going to talk about Venus all the way through the chart. We're going to talk about the transits, just about what you can expect with some of the Venus transits to the 5th and the 7th houses, other transits to the 5th and the 7th houses, and then understanding some of the derived rulerships that we want to address today. And so before we jump in and give you a tour of Venus, Suzanne has some workshops coming up, and I just would love for you to tell us more about them.
Well, I'm doing, if people catch this this week, I'm doing a live workshop that'll be very interactive, and people bring their charts and we'll be diving really deeply into the very thing we're talking about today. And that's on Saturday, December 16th. And I know you'll put the links there. It's just easier for people to see them than for us to say them. Links are not very poetic, are they?
No.
And I'll be doing more work in the new year with longer programs. But of course, one-on-one readings are always available, but people will be able to find me, and they can always book a free consulting call if they're not even sure what's right for them. And this one's easy to remember. This is just, they go to AskSuzanne.com and they can book a free call with me. It's not a reading, but it's a free chat.
Which is so generous. So thank you for
offering. I'm not going to want to work with somebody if I don't have a sense of what am I going to get out of this, and it's only fair. Of course,
I love
the Libra.
Right. Well, I would love, before we get going, just a little bit more about your history. Tell me more about when you started taking astrology classes. What was the spark for you? What did it?
Oh, it's all I ever wanted to do. I mean, my first science project in third grade was drawing the planets in detail. In high school, I learned a little bit, probably from Linda Goodman, like most of us did, about sun signs. And I would talk to my classmates about their sun sign, and went to college, went away after college and living overseas. And all I wanted to do was move to New York and find an astrology teacher. I just was like, all of like 23 years old. And that's all I wanted. And that was a long time ago. And that's all I wanted to do. And we got back, and the Village Voice was the thing people looked at. It was just kind of the hip counterculture publication. Came out on Wednesdays, you'd pick it up, you'd flip to the back. That's where all the really cool ads were, like the Miss Subway connections. And very first ad said, astrology class is now forming, call so-and-so, this number. And that was it. Never thought about anybody else, never looked back. And I've never stopped. And that was 40 years ago, if you can believe it.
Astrology is a lifetime study. I think that we continue to learn year after year, chart after chart. It teaches us as much to read as it does to receive to read. I'm curious, when you had your chart read first, do you remember that experience? What was like? What it did for you?
Well, it wasn't bad, because I would have quit right then. I'm pretty sure the first time that I really had it read was from my teacher.
Mhm.
And she was a psychologist and a social worker, and just a very wise, caring woman. And it's funny, because I actually remember when she read my mother's chart for the first time, and my mother, the double Pisces, just burst into tears and just cried the whole time, because she felt like it was the first time anybody ever understood her.
Yes, right. That's how I felt. I felt like I could sink into my bones, that it was going to be okay to be me. Astrology gave me such a huge gift. And I was about 20 when I started studying with my first teacher. So a lot of synchronicities there between us. Tell everybody your big three, or something cool about your chart that you like.
Well, I've been asked that question before, and I feel like and I'm going to answer it in a very diplomatic way, because I do have 4 planets in Libra. I'm going to say that everybody has their perfect chart, and it's not about what you like about it. It's how you find the highest possible expression as displayed in those symbols that you resonate with. So this is part of, like you were saying at the beginning, what's our role in it? Our role in our charts is constant. We are not victims of anything. Things are not inherently bad or negative or problematic. Some things are a little easier than other things. Some things are softer, but we all have different karmic paths. And we really can't look at that person and say, I want that path, because that's not right for you, for me, for us, so it's a very important conceptual thing. And especially people who are newer to astrology will read the little blurbs that are going to come with their software program, or that they're going to read online, and some of which I've probably written.
Mhm.
It's good stuff. Responsible horoscope writers are always going to try to put things in a positive, not sugarcoat, but what is the silver lining? What's the opportunity? And I think this is a really important distinction to make, that we get to kind of set the dial. Oh, your Venus is in Libra. So how could that come out? We never want the superficial, the obvious, what we call the shadow from a psychological perspective. We don't want that. So, but how do we want to express that? Mine is very complicated, because it's in Sagittarius. It's out of bounds. And like you, it's conjunct Saturn, which can say, stay in your lane. But then me out of bounds and trining Uranus, it's, yeah, make me. So we get to figure it out. And at different stages of our life, we are going to express it differently. When I was
Mhm.
younger, it was definitely much more Sagittarian, much more free, much more experimental and adventurous. They also progress, which is a whole different subject, but we go through stages of maturity and development and evolution, and we're always choosing it. The more self-aware we are, the more personal growth work that we do ourselves, the more, I think, the more ability we have to control it. Like playing a musical instrument or playing a sport. You can't just get up and do it necessarily well. Even if you have natural talent, you're going to get better with intention and practice. And I think it's the same thing with our Venus muscle. We're going to get better at love. And as we get a little more into it, I want to share what I think of as kind of the whole purpose. What's Venus here to teach us? Because nothing is random, nothing is an accident, nothing is a mistake, and everything has a gift for us if we are willing to do the work.
That's so eloquent, so beautiful, and it means that nobody's a victim of circumstance or location or even inheritance of any kinds. It's you really do have freedom and free will to evolve your Venus as you see fit. And so, what do you when you say the evolutionary promise? Can you just tell people kind of what that means?
Well, this is sort of based on what I was just saying, that
Mhm.
it's not an accident. We get to co-create with our planetary symbols. It's
Yep.
just code.
Yep.
There's no one way to interpret it. It's open to, the person that's reading the chart. What are their values? What is their philosophy of life? How self-aware are they? Now, Venus is never going to be Mars, right? Venus is going to be magnetic and attractive. Venus is going to look for cooperation and connection. Mars is very different. Mars is going to be about action, self, force, power, passion. So you can't mistake them. So, but Venus through the 12 signs, Venus through the 12 houses, Venus in relationship to other planets will mitigate the way she's going to express herself. And again, even that, even in a certain sign, certain house, making aspects or angle relationships to other planets has a whole range of possibilities that we get to the degree we have that awareness and mastery, we get to express it the way we choose to. There are people that are just going to keep acting the same way they've always acted since they were a kid. They never had, they were maybe never disciplined, or they never had their heart broken, or they don't maybe have a real conscience, or it's limited, or they don't care. There may be wounds, and wounds will, of course, affect. Trauma will always affect how things play out because it'll be more reactive than proactive. And we always want to be proactive. So I realized, Tiffany, I didn't actually answer your question. So that was more of the context
I love
that
it.
I'll answer it from. Venus, Venus is a lot of things. Like when we look at a chart, Venus is always going to be relationship
Hmm.
and love, but it's also friendship. It's beauty, it's harmony, it's balance, it's give and take, right? It's the arts. And really, bottom line, Venus is our values, what we care about, who we love, how we love, what we spend our money on. These are value driven. So we think about Venus as the love planet, but from an evolutionary perspective, which is to say, we are as interested in the soul's journey as we are in the plot twists that happen along the way. That's very fun and it's very dramatic and it's what we all get caught up on.
Yep.
And it's great and it's juicy and it's life's pleasure.
Mhm.
But there's more than just pleasure. So what Venus to me is about is how we learn to connect and interact with people and find the joy. even the joy in making sacrifices to attain a state of connectedness that we cannot achieve on our own.
Mhm.
And I don't think everybody is meant to be in relationship in every lifetime. How could that be the case? You know, almost 9 billion of us. We can't all be playing by the same rules. But when that is the goal, when we do say we want that, we really get to learn what it's like to live in harmony, lovingly with another person. And in so doing, we get to discover things about ourselves. And if we're in right relationship, where there's trust, where there's love, where there's mutual respect, we get to go through painful, mortifying experiences, but we feel supported and we get to take a step farther than we could by ourselves. We just can't really experience, there's kind of theoretical love that we can experience, love of nature, love of humankind, love of music, but that's not the same as your heart getting in there, right? And being raw and vulnerable and exposed, which
Mhm.
seems for a lot of people, especially people who've been hurt, which would be all of us, or 99% of us. It, and when we're really hurt and when it's really, bad, traumatic stuff, bad things happen. We're not pretending they don't. And when they do, it can be a really long journey to get to trust.
Mhm.
That's their journey. And I
Mhm.
think you will see it reflected in their chart somewhere. So the evolutionary purpose of Venus is how we magnetize, how we attract right partner, right relationship to us so that we get to have this very beautiful, high, potentially blissful experience.
Mhm. And this is something that you have done in your own life, weaving all of this together. I loved reading a little bit about your story and how you really put it all together in this map. And reading it, I felt the idea that you were just got real serious about it. It was like, let's put all of the tools together and see what we can do with this. And so I would love, are you comfortable to share a little bit about how, you went through COVID and those times and what you put together in terms of Venus and the law of attraction in your own life?
Sure. I mean, because I think it's really helpful for other
It is.
people, especially mature people. But this is true for everybody.
Yes. Yeah.
I meet a lot of people in their 20s and early 30s and at all ages who feel, like their time is up. They ran out of luck or they'll never have any luck. And it doesn't matter what age they are. It's really it's about an attitude, and it's about having hope, and it's about being willing to be honest with ourselves. It's not like I was single until, COVID hit. I was married. I have an amazing child. I had a number. I was kind of a serial monogamist, as you might expect, with Venus and Sagittarius in the seventh house. Love the partnership. Not sure I really can go all in, but it was never quite right. It just, whether it was values or lifestyle or geography or just something, I never felt fully seen and appreciated. I had a very, very good Libra girlfriend who would always say to me, you know what you need? You need someone who will adore you. And I thought, what an idealistic Libra. My Saturn was on my Venus was keeping me grounded. My Virgo moon was, not quite ready to buy into that. But I started, I had after my Chiron return, even after my second Saturn return, I had unfulfilling and increasingly shorter interactions with men. Men, that's my preference. But it's no different, whatever your preference is. We go through the same learning. Um, and COVID hit. I'm like, well, since we're not going out for a while, let's make the most of it. Let's get something out of this, right? Libra is cardinal. We are goal directed. And so I said, I want to take astrology as my career seriously. My progressed sun had just moved into Capricorn. It was time to be Capricornian about it. That I could control somewhat. But love feels more like you luck into it. But I've done a lot of quantum physics, law of attraction, Abraham Hicks and Dr. Joe Dispenza and Bruce Lipton and all those wonderful, brilliant pioneers in the field of neuroplasticity and creating our own reality. And I understand the way the mind works. And I said, well, let's try it, but not pay lip service to it. Let's do it. And I did it. And I still do it. I still do these practices 4 years later, and it's never stopped. And this is part of what I'm going to really get into in the workshop on Saturday, because it takes a lot more time because it's experiential and I want to guide people through it. But it's not having a picture in your head. It's not having a list of all the qualities of your ideal partner. It's not having, it's not their income. It's not their eye color. It's nothing like that. It's an energetic connection. And this is what Venus is so special for, because she's vibrational. She's about attraction. So instead of hunting them down and finding them and having a strategic search strategy, no. It was just neutralizing all of that and going back to, what is my heart longing for? What would it feel like to have my partner, my right partner, dare I say, my soul partner with me? What is the essential feeling of that connection? Not any of those other, and those are important things, but they're still superficial, meaning they're surface level. The frequency is the core. And every single day, morning and night, first thing in the morning, last thing at night, when we're starting to slip into slower brainwave states, we go from high beta all the time, right? On, to regular functioning beta to alpha, starting to fall asleep, slipping into theta. This is where we're very suggestible, and this is where we feel it. Part of it is our intention and our hope, but a lot of it is just what is there? What is the experience of that? And and looking at our own shadow. And not like every minute of every day, because that can lead to self-deprecation, that can lead to being very fault-finding. It's just becoming aware of where shadow is. Oh, things that aren't getting us what we want, where we're not being the highest self we want to be.
Yeah. Yeah, those tricks of the mind, right? I call my mind Mindy. So anytime I have those little shadow moments, I'm like, don't need that one today, Mindy. We can let that one go. We don't have to hyper focus on it. Are you familiar with the saying that worrying is like praying for something that you don't want? Right. And that's what I'm thinking about as a lot of us are going to sleep or waking up, or those moments of anxiety that you're talking about, maybe in some people that are wanting something that aren't having something, and to really just invert it back into a feeling tone, into a vibration that comes only from the inside out, and that is your role. I think that we are talking about, that's your role, is to take responsibility for the vibrations that you're choosing to feel, despite the place that you were born, or the work environment that you have, or despite the astrological weather, or any of it, because it is an inside job. Sounds like we're on the same page there, at least, right?
Absolutely. And it's just really getting clear on what you want and not settling.
Yeah.
And that's tough, because as women, and this is true for the kinds of men that would listen to this conversation, right? And it doesn't matter what their sexual preferences, the kind of men that care about this sort of thing are attuned to this. And they're the kind of people who can be people pleasers and don't really have that kind of self-authorization. This usually comes through childhood, and that usually comes from past life experiences that we're continuing to reconfigure until we get it right. Groundhog Day, right? Basically the same thing over and over again until we finally catch on. And but it's our responsibility to not allow bad behavior.
Mhm.
It doesn't mean we control other people. It doesn't mean we try to manipulate them. We just say, no, thank you. And if it can't change, if our energy can't become big enough and influential enough, then we have to say no and walk away instead of putting up with it and perpetuating this this cycle. And Venus, representing our values, representing high love, can teach us this. But the lesson goes beyond astrology. The astrology kind of is the map, is the diagnosis, but we get to do the healing work.
Through free will, through choices that we make, So I know that everybody that is listening to this episode is fully aligned with what we're talking about. I know that they have done the Joe Dispenza work and the Bruce Lipton work, and I know that this is really vibing with a lot of people. And I know that they're excited to listen to us go through the house or through the signs. So Venus, if we're talking about Venus as one of the planetary bodies in your chart, right? We've heard Suzanne describe what Venus can represent. And in this context, we're mostly talking about attraction, love. We're talking about connection, relationship. We're talking about love languages. And I think that this is not only important for partnership, but also gives such a good, ripe understanding if you're parenting or a caretaker or teaching people and where their Venus sign, man, you can really love them up in a way that they feel loved. So this has many, many applications. If you are brand new to astrology, don't know your chart, we're happy to help out. You can go to astro.com. It's just an easy, free online place to get your chart. If you'd like a full reading from Suzanne or myself, we would love to be honored to work with you in that capacity. But what you want to do is find your Venus, which what the glyph looks like for Venus. It's the female glyph. And we want to find out what sign it is in. So once you know your Venus sign, then this part of the conversation becomes a lot more interesting. So let's just take it from the top, guys. We're going to go Aries through Pisces. Each of the signs corresponds with a house, an astrological house. So there's 12 signs and 12 houses. And so as we go through the wheel of life, we'll go through the sign, but just know that it corresponds with a house. And so if that concept is new to you, I just wanted to lay it out there for you. But let's start with Venus in Aries, which corresponds to the first house. So, I'll just say Venus in Aries, I feel like some of it is a little, when I see people that have Venus in Aries, I ask, oh, do you like to initiate? Do you like to get the ball rolling? Do you like to be the fire starter? And I usually get a yes. I don't have Venus in Aries, and so I like to ask and learn, and that's something that I've found to be true. What is your experience with some Venus in Aries, folks?
Oh, very, very much that, Tiffany. I wanted to say two things preliminarily before we jump right into Aries. I know Aries is always very impatient and wants to go, but two things that are very important. One is, especially if you're kind of new to astrology, to really start to focus on the elements. There are 4 elements, right?
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Fire, earth, air, and water. And all the signs divide into one of those 4. And so, and we don't really have time, it's not an astrology lesson, but if your Venus is in a fire sign, it's going to have certain qualities that it's going to share. So that's going to be for all of them. I'll say them. It's Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. So that's going to be passion and action and what we think of as a masculine, but I mean a yang kind of approach to things. It's about experience. It'll take risks and it likes a lot of admiration. Okay. Venus in any of the earth signs, Taurus, Virgo, Capricorn, is about security. It's about stability. It can be a little more traditional. It is loyal. It is sensual. And I mean all the senses, and it's practical. Venus in the air signs, those are Gemini, Libra, Aquarius. They're going to be more mental, cerebral. It's going to be conversational, witty. There can be an element of friendship, humor. They like an exchange, and they can be, with the exception of Aquarius, they can be pretty flexible. With a lot of love to the Venus and Aquarius people. And the water, which is Cancer, Scorpio, and Pisces, they're much more emotional, and they get so caught up and consumed with love. They're soulful, and they're not as verbal. And there's a lot of sexuality and very deep, profound merging. The other thing that I wanted to say along those lines is because Venus is very close to the sun, Venus can never be more than 2 signs away from your sun sign. So that means 1 in 5 people statistically will have their Venus and their sun in the same sign. If that's the case, it's going to be even more so for you. Okay, so just keep that in mind. And when we talk about it, you could go, it sounds like you're describing my sun sign. There it is. It's the same archetypal energies. And then the other thing, and this is the more advanced, this is for the people that actually know how to do real astrology. Venus is all those archetypal things that we've been talking about and more. And because Venus is the natural ruling planet, or you could say she has the strongest affinity if we don't like the concept of rulership, with Taurus, which is more the physical and the embodied and the practical and the financially minded and the stability, and the Libra, which is much more of the dramatic and interpersonal and cerebral and playful side, and much, much, much more. So if you can look at your chart and you know what the house cusps are, wherever you see Taurus and wherever you see Libra, those houses, wherever your Venus is, she's going to bring, like if somebody's just been in Bloomingdale's in the perfumes counter, and then they come into your house, you're gonna be like, Chanel? Like she brings it with her, right? So they're going to bring some of the qualities of those houses to bear. So this is a way to get more information. So that said, then we can start to go through. And the other thing to say is in modern astrology, we do associate the first sign, Aries, with the first house and with the ruler Mars. Traditional astrology doesn't do that. These are just kind of random connections. But I don't see how you don't associate first house, initiating energy and self with Aries, right?
Right.
So these are just ways to get more nuanced.
Yes. I love that you backed up there because looking at the elements is great, especially for beginners and, even advanced. It's like you can be really simple with this stuff. You don't have to get overly complicated with it. The elements are a great foundational piece and they're going to repeat. So, right, it's going to go fire, earth, air, water around the chart. And so I really am glad that you brought that into it. So are we?
And one more thing, and
Yeah.
from an evolutionary perspective, whatever sign something is in, if we want to try to understand, well, why, we look to the polarity, which means the opposite sign. And we want to say that we want to maybe think that this Venus in the current chart is reacting to the shadow of the opposite sign.
Yes.
So we might think, oh, Venus in Aries is so brusque and, it's all about itself, but it wants to avoid the shadow of Libra, which is indecisiveness and people pleasing and insecure. So what is that highest potential of Venus in Aries? She knows what she wants and she's going to go after it. And she doesn't care if that's not ladylike. Because what's that? That's society's. And that's not even the society that she necessarily believes in or pays lip service to. She knows what she wants. She is self-directed. She's going to go after it. She's going to feel that sexual passion and pursue something. It can be competitive. It can be at all costs. But that's her job, is to do that. And because she is so forthright and direct, the ram just charges ahead. It's not the slow, methodical mountain goat that can take 10 years to get up a mountain. That ram is going to do it. Let's find out if we like it or not. But it has a lesson to learn, and that's patience.
Mhm.
And maybe you don't find out somebody's great qualities on one date or on 2 dates. Maybe you really need to drop your assumptions, not think you're right, because fire can be, shadow fire can be entitled, but to consider that maybe there's more than meets the eye. Maybe in not coming on so strong, someone else will feel safer to reveal more about themselves.
And to add to that, something more shallow is, what about like speed dating or hitting a bunch quickly or getting a lot of quick hits to get your overall vibe or your overall sense of what you do want? Sometimes there's the story of finding what you do want by seeing what you don't want. And so having a lot of the fastness about it in the speed dating or online dating world is something I know nothing about. So I'm not speaking from experience, but it was just idea I had while you were talking, like, I wonder if that would also be a useful tool for somebody seeking. Yeah.
It can be, but they are definitely, they can have, and I mean nothing judgy about this, but there
Yeah.
can be like a tomboyishness about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
They're just not demure. They're not shy. They're direct. They're just going to say what they think. They're going to take the action they want. They can be they can take the lead in love making. They don't need to wait to be asked or invited or wooed or seduced. They know
Mhm.
what they want. And the downside, the thing to watch for, is that they don't just like use somebody and for their own needs and then say, yeah, that's not going to sustain me,
Mhm.
because that might be them not looking at something inside of themselves that's afraid to be
Mhm.
vulnerable and to commit.
Well said. This is such good advice, and thank you. Let's move to Taurus. So if we think about Venus in Taurus, an earth sign where she loves to be, this is associated in modern astrology with the second house. And so Venus in Taurus is a whole different story than Venus in Aries.
Yes.
Venus in Taurus is much more practical and grounded, likes kind of the same thing over and over and over in
And
some.
over. Venus rules Taurus, so we say she's in domicile. She's in the sign of her home. And I should have said at the beginning, because Venus rules Aries opposite sign, we say that Venus in Aries is in detriment, which is an old-fashioned way of saying she struggles to express her highest self. So that just means we get to work harder if that's our placement. In Taurus, the evolutionary intention is to develop the bonds that give the security that Taurus needs without having to dig in its heels and get passive aggressive and to be defensive, to
Mhm.
just relax into the trust that this is what they've created. They need to learn to relax around that. Yes, like you said, they're very comfort driven. They're very motivated by security, financial, a nice, beautiful home, but also a security of a partner who won't leave.
Mhm.
They're very sensual. And again, sensual means all of the senses. They love to smell, they love to touch, they love to look. I mean, they're very if you have anybody with strong Taurus energy, especially with the Venus, you just never want to leave. It's just the greatest comfort. They do not like change at all, at all. They have to have something else in their chart that can make them a little bit more comfortable with that. But they love their rituals. You could say you do the same thing every single day. They go, it's a ritual. It's not just a routine if
Right.
they can elevate it to the realm of the sacred.
Yes.
And they just love being home. They love to entertain. They like to take care of their partner and the people they care about.
Yes, yes. So if you think about the opposite and complementary, if you think about the medicine wheel, the medicine of the opposite sign of Venus in Taurus would be Scorpio. So what are some
You know about Taurus energy. I mean, Scorpio energy, I misspoke.
yeah, yeah. So what are some
Um,
ideas that we could bring to the table around kind of a grumpy feeling Venus in Taurus if it was really working on the side?
Possessive, jealous, indulgent,
Mhm.
no limits,
Insecure.
stubborn, fixated.
Yeah. So if that sounds like some of the patterns of yourself or the people you tend to attract, right? You are going to be learning these tools on how to change that feeling knob and dial on the inside. I want you guys to know that Suzanne has this great handout that she's offered, and the link will be in the comments. And so if you're taking notes or if you're driving and doing something else and wondering how you're going to get this all down, she has some awesome handouts and resources for us. And so just know that that will be available to you. And let's move into who's next, Gemini. So think about Gemini, an air sign ruled by Mercury.
Right. It's
What's
air and it's mutable. And so that's why Gemini is, oh, here, there, wait, squirrel. It's fun, it's exciting, it's stimulating, and it's like quicksilver because you can't contain it. Gemini loves ideas. It's like, I had this great idea and I was thinking this whole thing. What do you think? And they actually want to hear your opinion. How rare is that? Somebody who really values what you think.
yeah.
They are meant to just be the gatherers. They gather information, they gather friends, they gather cool new things that are happening, and they're really a lot of fun. And the Venus there is a love of that. They attract that, and their evolutionary intention, if you will, is to be able to do this without judging, without thinking, well, my way is the only right way, my opinions are the only right ones. But they get to learn how to listen, how to partner, how to slow down, how to get into the body.
Mm,
I would say it's probably the sign that's the least naturally embodied, because
interesting.
they're in their heads, they're in the air, they're just anywhere except in here.
Mhm.
And because they love this intellectual and conversational and witty interaction, the senses, which are part of being embodied, are not always their first default way of interacting with people. And so part of what they get to learn, and again, this is very, very generalized. This is not
Yep.
to say everybody's going to have this. We have to look at the whole chart, the whole context,
Yes.
but they don't necessarily care about sexual passion and intensity like a Taurus, like a Scorpio. It's just not what they need. They could do it. And they go, can we go out now? Can we go to a movie? Can we go? Yeah, let's go out and eat. They want to be active. They are good with their hands, so that could be nice for touching. But there can be a kind of nervous insecurity until they really come to be at home in their embodied self.
That's Mercury, and then so the opposite, of course, would be Sag. So, what are some of the qualities we could discuss if you're aware of some of the shadow sides of a Venus in Gemini?
Well, it has to do with being fair-minded and trusting that other people's opinions are just as valuable as your own. I think a lot of us really love Sagittarian energy. We love Jupiter. Jupiter's the great benefic. What's not to love? What's not to love is when they think they have all the answers.
Right. That's what's not love. The self-righteous approach, and trying to fix people's problems that weren't asking for your help, not listening, not, those type of things. Another thing I'll say about my Venus and Gemini studies of just clients is that I find that they tend to meet people through their friend groups, that they want to be friends first. And that makes a lot of sense to me. So, okay. Well, let's move into the fourth house territory. So if we talk about Venus in Cancer, Cancer is a water sign ruled by the
Right.
moon.
It's the first water sign and the second cardinal sign. So it is very emotional, but it's driven. It's got goals. It has ambitions. It's not just flowing. It's not stagnant water.
Mhm.
It's water that's directed towards something. And what it really wants is strong, firm, emotional connection. It's it's the mother of the zodiac. It's the nurturer. It's the protector. And that's the Cancer style of being in love. They want to help and hold and even to heal other people's feelings, often because they're trying to heal their own, right?
Right, right.
And they need safety. Remember, that's their symbol is the crab in
Mhm.
that hard protective shell. They like lasting commitment. They want trust without coercion. They're not trying to manipulate, but they can. And that's part of the lesson, is just to allow. It's not about grabbing and clutching and clinging.
And
It's really
controlling.
about attracting from that deep well of very profound. I was going to say unconditional, but I don't think it's unconditional. I think Cancer's condition is you have to swear loyalty and never leave and promise you'll never hurt me. Because under the thing that's inside of that hard shell
Mhm.
is this soft mush, and
Mhm.
they know it. So they will sometimes come on a little harder and harsher than,
Mhm.
than they really are. But they're so empathic. They don't just think about what you're feeling, they feel. They can, like a mom, right? A mom who can feel her child's pain.
Mhm.
And they are definitely, part of their security need is financial, and they do want to have a good, safe, secure home. And the fear of abandonment probably overrides their good judgment sometimes. So they really want to work a little bit on that trust. They are so emotive that their opposite sign of Capricorn is what? Not the most emotional, is it? It's
Right.
very, kind of Mr. Spock, and that's not logical. And they are driven. They have security and reputation goals, and they really want to achieve certain levels.
Yes,
And
yeah.
Cancer, as a result of that, it becomes very emotionally driven.
Mhm. Yes, those ties that bind, and to that, they can be loyal to a fault, not really knowing when enough is enough, because not really willing to change gears because I'm going to stay loyal to you so that you don't drop me. Those type of things, I guess I've seen in clients over time. Okay, so the water signs, very intuitive. You touched on them being emotionally really able to pick up on things going on, signs and symptoms that they might take on from their partners, really knowing what you need to eat because of what's going on chemically in your body. So it can be amazing to be loved by somebody with their Venus in Cancer, because they're going to be so in tune with you, sometimes to a fault, sometimes to an advantage. But
Yes, it can tip over that balancing point pretty easily.
okay, let's move to Leo. So Leo is our next fire sign. It's associated with the fifth house. Leo is associated with the sun. So we go from moon and lunar energy with Cancer into this more solar fired sign. And so Venus and Leo, right? You were talking about the fire signs that need maybe a little bit more affection, adoration, need to be petted, need to be told how wonderful they are. And somebody like me with 4 planets in Scorpio forgets that people need to hear that, because I don't need to hear that. Is it nice and fun? Sure, but everybody has a different love language, right? And the Venus and Leo people that I know really appreciate it when you appreciate and recognize them. So it doesn't have to be physical, but it can be. It's just recognizing any little thing that they feel that sense of like, wow, they noticed, they loved me, they chose me, right? So tell us your Suzanne take on Venus and Leo.
Well, no, that's really great. I mean, that's all. I 100% agree with that. And what is, so it doesn't sound bad. Well, we should be loved and adored, right? What my friend told me should be my goal. But what's the trap?
Mhm.
Is it ever enough?
Is it ever going to feel
Is
successful?
it ever enough? Right? It's
Yeah.
like you feed the little stray cat once. Okay, it's good. I'm gonna move on. No, it's gonna keep coming back. This again, this is shadow.
Mhm.
Venus in Leo needs to be the peacock. It needs to be the center of attention. It's going to be a little louder. It's going to be a little more dramatic. It's going to be a little more flamboyant. It's
Mhm.
just going to be a little more,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
It's generous.
Mhm.
It's loyal. It's kind. It's your greatest cheerleader. I mean, high Venus in Leo is they're all wonderful when they're expressed in their positive, through their positive attributes.
Mhm.
But when they get into the neediness, if there's some wounding there, unfulfilled needs in childhood, well, there's a sense of entitlement. There's really strong needs. They can be domineering. They can be very bossy,
Right. Yeah.
right? I mean, it's just, and very self-serving. Well, if it's good for me, it's got to be good for everybody. And that's a tricky thing, right? Because that seems like they're motivated by other people
Right.
and what makes them happy. But really, they've got to catch themselves. Is it really for other people? Or am I being this generous and this positive and saying all these wonderful things about my friend so that it reflects well on me?
Mhm.
But they have the greatest capacity for unconditional love. Why? Because it's fifth house, like you said, Tiffany, and that's the house of children. And the purest love that we can achieve is the love for a child. Not all parents do this, but the
Mhm.
good parents have that. It's unconditional. There's nothing they wouldn't do.
Right.
It's intense. It is passionate. They can lead. They can lead in love. They can lead in their relationship. They're demonstrative. A healthy Leo Venus will just be so demonstrative, will just give so freely. And it's not like that's all, that's it. It will just be, well, what else? They just keep doing it. Um, and they can actually be surprisingly sensitive, which is not something we think about with Venus and Leo. And bottom line, when it's a positive expression, it's just fun, right?
Mhm.
It's just playful, it's childlike, which is not to say childish.
Right.
It is adventurous, it's just laughs, and it just likes to have a really good time, and it wants to make sure everybody else is having a good time too.
And very, very creative energy too. Able to
Absolutely, fifth house.
fifth
And
house.
Venus is the creative force. So Venus in the sign that rules creativity and or in the house we associate with pure creation um, is beautiful.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so let's do Venus and Virgo. I'm excited about this one. Virgo associated with the sixth house, of course. Virgo and Venus are associated with bees, as Mercury is. Mercury rules bees. I think it's a common misunderstanding or I guess conversation between astrologers that study ruling planets, right? That Venus would rule the bees. Maybe Venus rules honey, but Mercury rules the bees, and Mercury rules Virgo. So here we are again. We've already visited this topic slightly when we were in Gemini, and now we're in a different Mercury ruled sign, which is Virgo. And so we've got Venus, the planet of love and values and attraction and vibration and allurement in an earth sign of Virgo. So tell us about
And
that.
Virgo is the opposite of Pisces,
Mhm.
and Pisces is where Venus is said to be exalted.
Mhm.
So the opposite of exaltation is fall. So
Mhm.
Venus does struggle to express her feminine charms and her openness and her sensuality and her juicy Taurian embodiedness. Ironically, even though she's in another earth sign like Taurus, she's not as comfortable. Virgo is very analytical.
Mhm.
It's very discerning. And it can be wonderful if there's any risk of you eating, tainted food or something being problematic, and Virgo's going to pick up on it. It can literally save your life. But it can also make your life crazy because they notice everything that's off, everything that's askew, everything that wasn't done perfectly. And people think they're just being critical and implacable, but they really have this vision of how things could be. And my friend, the very wonderful astrologer Barbara Hand Clow, says Venus in Virgo is seeking, well, all of Virgo really is seeking the divine.
Mhm.
And anything that falls short is going to be, quote, imperfect. So we think of Venus as seeking this love and this high ideal. And so in Virgo, she really does see what's missing, what's not quite there, what's not quite enough. So
Mhm.
she can be self-critical. She can be very self-conscious. She can be modest. She's
Mhm.
not terribly spontaneous. She can be self-deprecating, like she will point out her own faults before anybody has a chance to touch it. The passion can be somewhat limited because it can get messy, right? Passion and fiery and spontaneous sex on the kitchen counter, not Virgo's approach, not in the kitchen. That's not hygienic.
Oh no.
Um,
Yes, that's a
it
hard
is
no.
very, it is health conscious. So it does want, it always wants to be improving. And the way it really expresses its language of love is service and verbal assurances. And I don't even know exactly what the language is. Helpful acts of service. Is that
Acts of
sort of
service.
language? Yeah, totally Venus and Virgo.
Virgo for sure. I mean, I use the word judgmental too because I think that it's not intended in a negative way. Judgmental, we need some sort of criticism to correct. So it's more, I guess, correction would be a better way of saying it than judgmental. I know that there's a negative connotation. That's not what I mean, but there's this like gate of correction that happens where it's very critical on themselves and on their partners. So I have a client who she and her husband are both Venus and Virgo people. And the way that I see that express in them is that they are hyper focused on their physical bodies. They have perfect muscle precision. If any little thing is out of line, it's like a nip and a tuck situation. They have this corrective measures that they take on their physical body. So I've seen it play out, which of course could go way overhand too. And that's very helpful to know if you're a parent of somebody who has eating disorders, who has issues with their body image, stuff like this. How can we then shift their perspective to realize the positive sides of the Venus and Virgo expression? How can we have the conversations with them about this is about progress, not perfection? Nothing's going to be perfect. Where can we have some allowances here? So I wanted to throw that in the mix too.
No, that's really useful. I mean, they also can be they can be like a little hypersensitive to things that don't work in their body.
Mhm.
Like they can be really clear, like I can't eat that. And
Mhm.
it's not because they went and did all this allergy testing or even muscle testing. They just know because they
Mhm.
can be very in tune with themselves that way.
Yep. Yes. Okay. So, what's after Virgo? Libra. That brings us into Libra,
Well,
where
you will be the one that will tell us if if this is true or not. And again, everything is mitigated by the house, the aspects, the whole chart, right? In the context of more. But Venus in Libra, her evolutionary intent in relationships is to form relationships that are going to help her really commit, go beyond the surfaces, and really get to the deep, connected, passionate. It's more than love. It's empathy, it's awareness of other, and a commitment to supporting their personal spiritual development.
Absolutely.
They're very devoted, they're very loving, they're a lot of fun, but it can struggle with decisiveness.
Mhm.
And they really like things harmonious. I could say Tiffany really likes
I do.
things that are really pleasant and gracious and, smell nice and look nice. Appearances are important, style. But I would say one of the hallmarks of anything Libra, when there's a little shadow showing, they are conflict averse and they will do anything to avoid that, to keep the peace, which means not honoring themselves. And remember, ultimately, Venus is about our values. So what does that say? If Venus is putting someone else's choices, their preferences, or behaviors above their own. So what she gets to learn is how to be strong and committed and unafraid to find a way to express this.
Mhm.
And this is different, and it's not really what we're talking about, but Mars in Libra, which, Venus rules Libra, it's in domicile. Mars isn't. Mars is in detriment. So Mars can really make a mess of it, where it can get really angry, but it cannot express it. So it turns inward. And
Mhm.
that can come out as sarcasm and passive aggressive behavior. And it can also come out in a disease pathway because it's such intensity that isn't being channeled in a productive way.
Mhm.
Venus in Libra is it's so aesthetic and it's so pleasing and it's always going to look good and it wants its partner. It's always going to inspire its partner to look his or her best too. But where Taurus is more of the raw, primitive animal, side of that Venus sensuality, sexuality, Libra's more genteel.
Mhm.
It takes a Scorpio stellium to pull it out and let it get a little, little get messy and just really to express itself without feeling like, oh, this isn't right. This isn't polite or something like that. It really wants to stretch some of those definitions for itself.
Yes.
And it can be a little insecure, even though it's in its home sign. Libra looks to others for validation. She knows she's good, but she still believes that she needs somebody else to say, you go, you got this. And then
Mhm.
she does.
That's perfect. Yeah, that's that balance of Libra Aries energy, right? A little fuel to
Learning, right? We learn. I have 4 planets, not my Venus, in Libra, and I probably have more Aries friends and close Aries in my life than any other sign because I'm just in awe of them. I don't always like the way they act, but it's like, how can I do that? How can I just say no?
eat and not worry and,
Right?
right about the other person or the way that they're going to feel or all of that stuff, right? Yeah, that's a beautiful
Right. And not hurting people's feelings.
and that's kind of a trick too because it's a I don't want to hurt your feelings because I don't want to feel bad on the other side of your emotional fallout. It's also like a very self-centered approach. Like when you really flip the coin and do your self discovery, you're going to find the truth, right? And that's very Venus and Libra. Look at both sides of the coin. Look at two different perspectives. Get some. You would really benefit from air stuff, talking it out, airing things out so that it's not all just compressed and steam rising inside. Getting things out of your head and onto paper is another really helpful tool. I haven't put it together yet, but I am big on relationship inventory. I have an entire protocol. I have questions that go in order. I have this huge appreciation for the people that showed me relationship inventory. And I think that is a great antidote for Venus in air signs but especially Venus in Libra. Get it out of your head, onto paper, look at it so you can assess what's real instead of what's going on in here and the hormones and the thoughts and the society and all other things. Put it on paper, and then, you can move forward because it's clear and it's honest, and there's a diplomacy involved in that. So,
and
okay.
sometimes get it on paper and then take a page from Aries' book and just do something. When you can't decide, do something. You can always react and change it later. But Libra can get very stuck because the energy is so caring and diplomatic. But I see the merit on that. And then on the other hand, and we just spin, right? We're just like that little wheel on the computer. We're just like spinning and spinning because we don't want to hurt anybody. And we do see the value in all possibilities. And sometimes you just gotta throw the dart and go.
And taking personal responsibility to let everybody off the hook, right? We could sit and talk about this subject for a while.
On all of them.
All of them for sure. But let's move into one of the juicy ones. So we're going into Scorpio territory. Scorpio co-ruled, depending on who you ask, by Mars and Pluto. Scorpio ruling the 8th house in modern astrology. Scorpio, the opposite of Taurus. So tell us about Venus in this placement in Scorp.
Well, as you just mentioned, in the sign that's opposite Taurus, which it rules, it's in detriment. So traditionally, the thinking is it struggles a little bit to express her highest values. So here, the evolutionary intention is to really experience such radical honesty and to be able to get so vulnerable that they can get to a place of trust that's been wounded for them.
Yeah.
People with strong Scorpio energy somewhere in their storyline, this lifetime, past lifetimes, has had their trust destroyed. It's a very natural reaction to just cross your arms over your chest, over your heart, and say, that's it, I'm done. I'm never going to do this again. But that's the very thing that blocks them from having that kind of intimacy and that merging, which is Scorpio, Pluto, 8th house. And that's what their soul really desires. And it's through that merging that they can get out of themselves and beyond. And that's where the transformation, that highest level of transformation comes. But, we see the catch-22 there because they have issues with trust or releasing control, which is all the same thing. It all comes out of fear. Mm-hmm. So Scorpio gets to look at its relationship to fear and trust and feel the fear and do it anyway. Right? This can be so primitive. This could be so second nature that they don't even know that this is what motivates them. Just unexamined Scorpio energy is lusty. It is controlling. It will do whatever it takes to get what it wants. I was going to say it's prey, but that sounds even worse than it is, right? It is driven by its needs, its desires, and its appetites. And it is obsessive. It doesn't say, yeah, okay, that's enough. It's never enough. Now, aware, transformed, higher vibrational Scorpio is divine. I mean, it's pretty close to the divine. The 8th house, Pluto, this is the realm of mysteries, of the unseen world, of going through the veil. Scorpios can be highly sexual or celibate, and they're fine either way. They're very magnetic. They can be very irresistible. They have this gaze, right? They have this way of looking at you where you just feel kind of hypnotized by them sometimes. And their level of intensity and passion can actually overwhelm people who aren't secure in who they are. I mean, we think of them as possessive. We think of them as sexualized, but it's really on a higher level of, like I was saying, merging and becoming one with another on a soul level, which is really what tantric union is about. It's not about holding back for, long periods of time, which it's become in kind of mainstream pop, understanding. It's really about losing oneself and ultimately surrender.
Yep, that's beautiful. Yeah, Scorpio, we also have the eagle and we also have the phoenix, right? So going through the fires of transformation. I read a quote the other day, was it Rumi? I don't know, guys, but it basically was like, to be a candle, you have to burn, to be a light giver, you have to go through the flames. And that makes me think of Venus and Scorpio. So there can be obsessive tendencies. There can be fixation tendencies. Scorpio is a fixed sign, right? And so there's also, similar to Taurus, there's I know what I want, I know how I want it, and it's going to go down this way. When you go to the restaurant, they know what they're going to eat. I always like sussing people out when you're going to a restaurant with them. Like they're like looking on the menu, like they're like they don't know what they want. No, you went to a Mexican food restaurant, you know that you want enchiladas, just order them, right? So there's this desire, there's this knowing, there's also the ability to completely transcend through sexual experiences, through intimate healing, through the sacred reunification that happens on the inside layers, the inside level. So I think that you've given a really beautiful portrait. Yeah, I'm going to stop myself there. So
right. Scorpio as a pretty strong one yourself.
yeah.
And another thing that's interesting, one of the gazillion ways to look at the system of astrology is how each sign is a reaction to the preceding sign.
Right, yeah.
So where Scorpio is this like intense, like consolidated, internal, passionate thing, then we get Sag. And what is Sag? Sag is liberation.
Yes.
Sag is freedom.
Yeah.
Sag it's no limits, but outward. It's just really going beyond. It's having the experiences. Remember, we said fire is experiential. It's show me, don't tell me. Talk is cheap, and to a Sagittarius, it can be absolutely useless. They want the full experience of it. And Venus is going to magnetize these experiences and also these types of people to them, these types of relationships. The moon is what we're drawn to from our emotional level, but Venus is what we're going to magnetize for love to try to get that right partnership where all the puzzle pieces kind of, right, they all line up so that we can feel that safety, that trust, so that we can do our own individual soul work. So Sag is always going to be do more, try more, experience more, expand. How big can you be, right? How visionary, how idealistic. It's action oriented. It plays by its own rules. It's very independent, very philosophical. Sag and Venus and Sag would be, it can also be drawn towards spiritual, religion, and philosophical pursuits. Sometimes actually kind of eclipsing the more personal sexual one-on-one. Sag is one of the signs that we can see just being really fulfilled on its own. Because it wants to just keep expanding. And when it hasn't met its right partner, it can say things like, they just hold me back, right? They just limit me. I can't be, bound. I've got to explore it all. And what's the shadow? What we were saying before, they can know it all, right? They know, they've done it all. They've been there because they have seen. They're worldly. Venus and Sag is worldly. They can be drawn to exotic things, exotic cultures, and people, even just foreign people. They may not really be exotic, except that they don't speak the same language. And that can be kind of exotic and exciting.
You can be hot for teacher, hot for guru, hot for the people that teach you things that help you explore and expand your horizons. You can fall in love at university. You can you can fall in love anytime, but the idea here is there's that education tie-in. It makes me think of the magic carpet ride whenever I see Venus and Sagittarius. It's like, let's go, let's explore, let's go somewhere vast and beyond. Let's be on the adventure. It's not quite fairy tale. It's not like that type of an adventure. It's not pretend land. It's like, let's go on a pilgrimage. Let's do something that matters, that's interesting on this quest for truth. And we're here with life force energies, fire sign, right? So
I love that. That's great. It's like a 21st century fairy tale, Venus
yeah,
and Sag. It's
yeah.
a very empowered feminine hero.
Yes, yeah. So and she's got the archer, right? Let's pull the arrow back like Cupid's arrow.
Yes, aim high. And then the reaction to all that expansive, let's just try it, let's take risks, let's experience it, is Venus in Capricorn, where the Venus values are pretty different. It's much more traditional dad. Half of us didn't have a traditional dad, but we know what that archetype is. And
Yes.
that's work hard, right? Any job we're doing is worth doing well. A penny saved is a penny earned, all that kind of stuff, right? That's the Venus in Capricorn. She kind of takes on those traditional values. It will often delay love and relationship until it reaches certain milestones in its career. This is very, very important. It's not superficial. It's what its values are. It's a lot of R words, right? It's responsible and reliable and realistic. And
Respect.
it wants a partner that it can share its goals, because it's super goal oriented, but also lifestyle. It wants nice things. Now, if it wants nice things because that's what it truly values, that's beautiful. If it wants nice things because it will compensate for not feeling good enough, that's something that it gets to look at, right? But Venus here can actually bring creativity to the professional pursuits. She can help them, because they are so strategic. They realize, well, I can't get there alone. So they can make good friendships and associates with their work. Often they can partner with somebody from work, because frankly, that's the only place they're going to meet anybody if they are that kind of archetypal Capricorn energy. But they are an earth sign, so they are sensual. They are materialistic, but they can also have a caring parental, but kind of in the tough love parental way. But there's still love as part of it. They're very, very patient. They play a long game, and they're very self-directed. But what they're not is typically a wild child. They're not the crazy experimental, type. They're gonna kind of stay in their lane, but you can count on them, and they really want to make a difference in the world. They really do.
Yes,
And they're funny as hell. I mean, that's an underrated virtue.
You want them as your managers. You want them as your CEOs of your company. You want them. The other thing I think that I'm going to throw a outlier here, and just correct me if you think I'm like totally in outer space with this. But I think Capricorn is one of the most misunderstood signs. So it has two animal archetypes involved, right? So we've got the goat, the ambition, climbing to the top of the mountain, seeing long distance, long haul vision. And then we've got the sea creature. So it's Capricorn is the sea goat. The sea creature part is underwater. Very intuitive, very in tune, very in touch with the earth and the needs and the environment. And so we tend to talk about Capricorn as business oriented in one way, but there's this other like very not Stevie Nicks is more Taurus, but there's this very like healer side to Capricorn. Some of the best healers I know are Capricorn, and they're not trying to be the top best healer in the world. They just have some very, I don't know, this like innate ability to work with crystals or essential oils, or in a way that not your everyday Joe could just train and learn and go do and perform. There's something juicy about the healing energy of Capricorn. What do you think about that?
I think the crystals makes a lot of sense because crystals are born from the earth,
Yeah.
right? It's some of the highest, purest energetic
Mm-hmm.
power that we develop from earth, and they're natural, that they're part of the natural world.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I would say so. I love that. So I used to work with a woman when I lived in Brooklyn, and I would go to her for massage, and I would do astrology for her. But she didn't just do massage. She did massage, she did ama massage, she did shiatsu. She was a Reiki master. She gave me an attunement. She worked with crystals that were always under. She would vibe you before you would come. She would place them under the table. She had tuning forks, including one set that was attuned to the divine realm. She had these musical bowls. She made crystalline jewelry.
Yeah.
But this is what I like to say. But she was a Capricorn, so in her day job, she was a banker.
Oh, right. Yes.
So
Perfect.
she totally embodied both of those archetypal qualities that you were saying.
Both worlds. That's such a brilliant demonstration or illustration of that energy. You don't, I always say, like, you don't have to have an astrologer. You're living your chart anyway. So it's cool that that's how it played out, or is playing out. So as we build the energy, we move into the 11th house, we move into Aquarius, another fixed sign, an air sign. Venus in Aquarius can also be Hmm. Very like Uranian, very rebellious, very open-minded, very polyamorous. Not everybody in Venus and Aquarius is that way, but a lot of my clients are. So throw that out there in the mix. People that are open-minded, that are future thinking, that like to connect in groups. I think about the Roman bathhouses when I think of Venus and Aquarius. And so I'd love to hear you teach on that.
Well, those are really great ways to think about it. I mean, the one thing you can say about Aquarius is they're all different.
Right.
There's certain shared qualities among all of the other signs, but Aquarians are always going to break the mold,
You're
right?
right.
Each one is going to do their own super unique combination of those qualities. It's very cerebral as an air sign. Aquarius is about groups, but not just their friend group, humanity, right? Society. They really care about improving life for people who are in groups different from them.
Mhm.
Right? These are men who are going to champion the Me Too movement. These are going to be white people. They're going to fight for Black lives. These are people that don't just think of, well, what am I? And that's what I want to defend. They see the human family. It's profound. What's the shadow? Really hard to do one-on-one.
Mhm.
They have such a mission. They have such a vision that it's not that they get bored. It's just sometimes it isn't enough to be
Mhm.
with just one. You said rebel, and I think of, because that's the Uranian quality. Rebel is when you're reactive. I'm
Mm.
rebelling against something that is. But if you're proactive and you have an awareness of who you are and what you're here to do, then you're a revolutionary.
Yes.
You get it going. You
Yes.
start it. And they could be anywhere along that spectrum, but they're not going to just fall in line. They share as their ancient ruler the Saturn, which is the sole ruler of Capricorn. It was before we had telescopes and we knew about Uranus. Saturn was the only ruler, and it retains qualities of that. So Aquarius has this dual nature where it actually has certain things that can be very traditional and very formal and very historically oriented.
Mhm.
But it is the modernist, the advanced, it's technology, it's other realms, it's electricity, It's what we're talking through and what people are listening to. It's higher energy. It's the higher octave of Mercury, which is communication. It's a whole new level of doing it. It's Aquarius has a mission, whether or not they say it, whether or not they even know it. They're not playing casually. And that's why they can seem aloof or detached. They're just tuned in to something a little different. They are individualist. They are quirky, and they wear it proudly. You go to a party, especially when when I lived in New York, and everybody wore black, right? All the time. It's just what you wear. And somebody shows up with like purple and a print pants and maybe a boa. It's like, Aquarius? Oh, they're gonna stand out. They're just going to dress a little differently.
Mhm.
And the Venus, because Venus is about appearances and style and aesthetics, you can usually spot the Aquarius in the crowd. And it's interesting, and this, we don't have time to go too deeply into it, but they have another irony too, which is they're very drawn to groups.
Mhm.
They never really feel like they belong to any, which is a big part of what gives you Aquarian and Venus, which is about our values and what we magnify to not magnify, but magnetize to us. We're not really sure who our person is, who is our unicorn.
So, case study with that, I have a friend who I do read her chart, but she's Venus in Aquarius, Sun in Aquarius, and she makes her living in the artistic world. She basically does design work, photography stuff for bands, so for groups of people. And she's not a singer. She doesn't play an instrument, but she focuses on inspiring people in bands and helping people through music that helps the tribe of humanity. And so we got invited to, anyways, that's a whole other thing, but I can see, I love what you said about the having both Saturn and Uranus as part of the co-rulement, I guess, of Aquarius, because she also dresses very traditionally. And I never thought about that as being Saturn. I'm like, what are you, like, let your freak flag, like, do something crazy and sexy and juicy. And she's always like, just dressed very nicely, and which is beautiful. But I hadn't thought about that until you mentioned Saturn there. So I know
Well,
we're,
and again, what do we always say, Tiffany? We've got to look at the whole context of the
yes,
chart.
of
What's the
course.
ascendant? How do they want to be seen, right?
Yeah, right.
And what's the ruler of the ascendant? Because that's going to talk about how they perceive themselves.
Yes. So we made it around the wheel. We've got to do Pisces. I want to be sensitive to your time too. And so thank you for carrying over a little late. And I want to talk about Venus and Pisces um, in terms of course, the 12th house, in terms of a water sign, in terms of being ruled by Jupiter and Neptune, in terms of just this juicy culmination of walking all the way around the wheel. So what should we think about when we're loving Venus and Pisces?
I'm so glad you asked it like that, because my answer is we shouldn't think about it at all. We
Okay.
should close our eyes. We should drop in.
Uh-huh.
We should feel what it's like to go beyond our body, to go beyond our skin, because Pisces is etheric.
Mhm.
It's of a different dimension.
Mhm.
So high vibe, and that sounds so judgmental, but people know what I'm talking about. There's no judgment. Pisces that is expressing, Venus is exalted in Pisces for a reason. It is pure love. It
Mhm.
is no ego. What is love? What is it like to tingle with connectivity? This is what loves everybody. This is the person that the animals will come up to,
Yes.
because it was soft and gentle, and it has no malice. It has no anger. It has really worked through all of those issues. It's the last sign. It's where we go to get out, exit through the gift shop. It's the end of the zodiacal of journey. It is beautiful. It is high. It's dreamy. You get lost in each other. And what is the very, very, very obvious shadow opposite of that? Escapist, unrealistic, lost in fantasy. It can be addiction. And it doesn't just have to be drugs or alcohol. It could just be addiction to fantasy movies or porn or shopping or anything where they just get so out of touch, but not by staying in touch, by running away, tuning out, not tuning in. They're water. They are emotional. They are intuitive. They vibe you. They feel you. They don't have boundaries. They're gentle. They can be submissive. And when they're not in their power, they can be martyrs and they can be codependent, and they will just sacrifice themselves for someone else out of a misbegotten sense of love and devotion.
Yeah. You know, I'm also thinking about connecting through potions, connecting through water, going on swimming dates. I have some Pisces people that work in the beverage industry that connect over libations and sharing cheerses and sharing energy that way, and being lost in the music, right? That they are the muse, being in touch with your higher self, being in touch with your muse. Not being able to identify as a drop of water, but we are the whole ocean. There is no them over there. We're all this reflection of each other. It's very blended energy. Pisces being mutable, right? So there's some love for everybody. You know, there's enough for there's enough like universal love. So I don't know if unconditional is the right word again, but this universal love and blessings that come with the highest of Venus and Pisces, right? This very altruistic, generous, compassionate prayers, you know, for the universe. That, like, this is the type of love that's available, that's welling up in the hearts of Venus and Pisces. So
it's
Suzanne,
interesting, Tiffany,
yeah.
because you know, Venus has this 8-year synoptic cycle with the sun, and my mother, who was a Pisces, had Venus conjunct her sun, and my son, my boy, has Venus conjunct his sun in Pisces, and his dad has Venus conjunct his sun in Pisces.
Mm.
So I had my mom, my partner for a while, and my son all had this Sun, Venus, Pisces. So I got to watch and experience the very different ways that it would come out based on their gender, their age, their generation, how they were parented. And it was fascinating. I mean, it
Yeah.
was really an education.
Yeah, that's great. What is interesting study too, to think about it that way, you know. Okay, so do you have time to touch on transits, to touch on rulership? Do you need to wrap it up? Where are you in your day?
Maybe we could do another session. I think that I think we've probably also tested everybody's patience
Yeah,
at this point. You know, it's we've been chatting a while. I mean, it is such a magnetic topic,
it
but
is. It's fun to talk about. And so let's save those for another time. I want to remind everybody that Suzanne is teaching a really reasonably priced, fabulous workshop this weekend, which is December 16th, isn't it?
that's right. And I am teaching it, but I would say I'm leading it because it's going to really be people sharing their charts and their stories with some, you know, it's about creating your vision.
Yep.
It all starts with your vision and your intention, and everything is going to follow from that.
So you would be so lucky to have Suzanne as your leader and your guide. I hope you all go. And if not, can they get a replay is one question everybody asks.
Yes, but they have to buy it to get it, unfortunately, because I have to be in my integrity to the people who are intending and paying for it.
Of course. And then my other question is, you're teaching more later in the year. So if you guys missed this round in December of 2023, just stay tuned with Suzanne's work in 2024. The offers that she has, I know you're going to want to take advantage of. She has given our audience some very special offers, very generous offers, which I will leave in the comments below, and make sure that you can find her and her work. This is like life career goal for me to have Suzanne Gerber talk about this. This is awesome. So you have filled my little heart up totally. Well is full. I can now go out into the world with a full cup, happy, full of just this wonderful discussion and conversation. Thank you for following astrology. Thank you for leading and guiding so many people, myself included. And I do hope you'll come back.
I would love to, and you are such a beautiful and gracious host. So I bow to you. Thank
Oh,
you, Tiffany.
yeah. Thank you, Suzanne. All right, guys, until next time, thank you so much for being here. We encourage you to follow your heart, follow your chart. And until next time, guys, namaste.